Picture this. You have just finished a really grueling long day of walking.
Oh, yeah. You're exhausted.
Right. And you are sitting in a touristy cafe right in the heart of Thamel.
Naturally.
The atmosphere is buzzing, that Himalayan air is crisp, and you order what you fully expect to be a well-earned, restorative cup of local coffee.
Which sounds idyllic.
It does, but then you take that first sip and your face just immediately scrunches up. The liquid is so overwhelmingly acidic, so brutally burnt, that you literally push the mug away.
Yeah, that is a very universal tourist experience right there.
And you probably think to yourself, okay, Nepal has incredible mountains, but they clearly cannot do coffee.
Which is an incredibly common assumption to make. I mean,
Sure.
honestly, based on what most visitors experience in those high-traffic cafes, it is a completely logical conclusion.
Right.
But the fascinating thing is, it's also entirely wrong.
And that brings us to the mission for today's exploration. We are going on this highly caffeinated journey to unpack a massive 10-year research project from David Ways.
Right, from the Longest Way Home Travel website.
Exactly. If you follow his work, you know him for meticulously reviewing trekking companies, evaluating high-altitude mountain trails, and updating his guidebooks. But it turns out David has this very serious, long-standing side passion.
Yeah, he really does.
For the past decade, he has been traveling to established plantations, visiting new local growers, sitting down with roasters, and rigorously reviewing coffee beans grown right there in Nepal.
And the data he has uncovered, it completely flips the script on that terrible cup of coffee you had in Thamel.
It really does.
Because the raw, high-altitude Arabica beans grown in Nepal are actually, well, they're some of the most uniquely flavorsome in the entire world.
Wait, really? The entire world?
Yes, we are talking about deep, complex notes, incredible layers of flavor. In his travels, David ranks Nepal's raw coffee beans alongside the absolute best globally.
Wow.
Yeah. The only other bean he's come across that even comes close in terms of sheer flavor complexity is the Malabar monsoon bean from India.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
All right, it's a completely different profile, but similarly intricate.
And the global market actually recognizes this, even if the tourists in Thamel do not. Like, if you visit a specialty craft coffee shop in Tokyo, Japan, you might easily find a Nepali high-altitude cup of coffee being served for like $50 US.
Which is wild. $50 for one cup.
It's crazy because the absolute best raw beans are heavily exported. Fortunately for us, David has spent a decade sifting through what is actually available locally in Nepal, looking for the beans that match that $50 standard.
Doing the hard work for us.
Exactly. But before we get into the actual roasters, we need to set the baseline for this session. David's methodology here is strictly scientific.
Yeah, he didn't mess around.
No, for every single bean we're going to discuss today, he bought them directly from the roaster or supplier, he self-ground them, and he brewed them all equally.
Like as an espresso or an Americano,
Yeah.
right?
Right, to ensure a totally level playing field and control all the variables. So my big question to kick this off is this. If the raw beans grown in the Himalayas possess this incredible Tokyo-level natural genius, why is it so incredibly hard to actually get a decent cup of coffee locally?
That is the core mystery of the Nepali coffee scene.
Yeah.
And the answer, it lies entirely in the industry's biggest bottleneck, which is a roasting process.
A little roasting, okay.
Yeah. To truly understand this, you have to look at the raw material itself.
Mm-hmm.
Over 70% of the world's commercial coffee is Arabica.
Right.
And Arabica plants, they absolutely thrive in cold, high-altitude environments with specific soil drainage, which makes Nepal's steep geography completely perfect for it.
That makes sense.
By its very nature, a high-altitude Arabica bean is supposed to yield a dark, rich, and nutty profile. It is absolutely not meant to be highly acidic.
Yet almost all the Nepali coffee you encounter locally ends up tasting either aggressively acidic or just completely burnt to a crisp.
Exactly. The potential of the bean is essentially being destroyed in that final step.
Yeah. And the excuses from the local roasters, they're just wild.
Oh, they always have a defense ready.
They do. When consumers complain about that harsh, acidic taste, you tell a roaster the coffee tastes off, and they will look right at you and blame you.
Yep. You're using too much bean.
Right. Or they will claim, oh, this is a dark roast, you should really try a medium roast, while standing in a shop that literally does not stock a single medium roast.
Which is just, deflection. The reality they're trying to hide is that very few roasters in Nepal currently possess a deep understanding of the actual delicate chemistry of coffee roasting.
Because roasting is not just applying intense heat until the green bean turns brown.
No, not at all. It is a highly volatile sequence of physical and chemical reactions.
Right, let's talk about the mechanics of that, because it is fascinating. It's the Maillard reaction, correct?
Yes, right.
The same chemical process that browns a steak or bakes a loaf of bread. As the temperature rises, the amino acids and reducing sugars in the coffee bean begin to break down and recombine, creating hundreds of entirely new flavor compounds.
You've got it. And the critical moment in that process is what roasters call the first crack.
The first crack.
Yeah. As the bean absorbs heat, the moisture inside turns to steam, building up immense pressure until the bean literally pops and expands. You can hear it.
Oh, wow.
This is the threshold where the delicate fruit and floral notes are fully developed. If a roaster has the technical skill to manage the heat curve right at this exact moment, they can lock in those complex flavors.
But amateur roasters in Nepal often lack the equipment or the knowledge to track these thermodynamics.
Exactly. So they just blast the beans with maximum heat to achieve a uniform dark color.
Effectively blowing right past the first crack.
Right past it, and incinerating all the delicate, complex flavors of the high-altitude Arabica in the process.
It is like taking a brilliant Oscar-winning script and handing it over to a totally amateur director.
That's a great way to put it.
The raw material, the dialogue, the pacing, it is all pure genius. But the execution is so clumsy that the final movie is completely unwatchable.
And even if they manage to get it right once, just by pure luck, achieving that consistency batch after batch is another massive hurdle.
Because it's an agricultural product.
Right. Coffee beans are dynamic. Their moisture content fluctuates based on the harvest and the ambient humidity. If you just set a timer on your roasting machine and walk away...
Which you shouldn't do.
Definitely not. A batch roasted on a dry Tuesday is going to behave completely differently inside the drum than a batch roasted on a humid Thursday.
And because the roasting process is so misunderstood, the local market becomes an absolute minefield for you as a consumer.
A total minefield.
It explains why hunting for good beans can feel like navigating a maze of expensive traps and marketing gimmicks specifically aimed at tourists. Let's dig into the organic label, because David's research absolutely dismantles this concept in Nepal.
Yeah, he is quite blunt about it. In the context of Nepal's coffee market, the organic label is mostly just a meaningless catchphrase.
Really? Just made up.
It was essentially a marketing tactic invented around 2010 to lure in well-meaning tourists who are conditioned to pay a premium for organic labels back home.
Wow.
The reality on the ground is that there is no consistent, properly regulated organic monitoring system in Nepal.
So because that organic label is unregulated, it allows roasters to charge top dollar for mediocre beans, which perfectly explains the massive sticker shock tourists face.
Oh, the sticker shock is real.
You would logically assume that buying local coffee in the country where it is actually grown would be a bargain.
Right, but it's not.
Not at all. A kilo of beans can easily cost over $25. A little 250-gram bag will run you $10. Why is the domestic supply so shockingly expensive?
It comes down to the brutal economics of a developing agricultural industry. Commercial coffee farming in Nepal is still relatively young. Many of the plantations have trees that are literally still maturing and haven't reached their peak yield yet. So there is a massive shortage of raw supply from the get-go.
And then there's the export market.
Exactly. As we mentioned with Tokyo, the export market is highly lucrative. International buyers will pay a massive premium for these unique, high-altitude beans, meaning the absolute best of the crop gets exported immediately.
Leaving the scraps for everyone else.
Pretty much. It leaves a very small, heavily picked over, and very expensive supply for the local market.
Which makes it an incredibly risky gamble for you to drop that kind of money on a bag of beans.
Very risky.
David's rigorous scoring system really highlights this reality when we look at the middle of the pack. Instead of just listing these off, let's group these mid-tier roasters by the specific hurdles they represent.
Good idea.
Starting with the trap of marketing over substance. First up is Everest Coffee.
Everest Coffee. This is the quintessential example of prioritizing packaging over the product. You find it wrapped in this beautiful, shiny golden foil.
Setting an expectation of something highly premium.
Right, but under David's methodology, it ranked at the absolute bottom of the scale, 1 out of 5.
Ouch.
The beans are roasted far too dark, resulting in an aggressively bitter profile with a distinct, highly unpleasant chemical overture.
Joining them in the marketing over substance category is Himalayan Java.
Yeah, they managed a slightly better but still below average score of 2.5 out of 5.
Which is surprising because this is perhaps the oldest and most ubiquitous coffee brand in Nepal. I mean, you will see their cafes absolutely everywhere.
Everywhere. Yet, despite their massive footprint, the beans themselves are surprisingly bland. And if you ask the staff in their shops about the different roast profiles, they generally lack even basic coffee knowledge.
Transitioning to our second group, we have roasters defined by the struggle with consistency.
Take mountain coffee beans, for example. Another 2.5 out of 5.
What's their story?
They actually attempt to offer a mid-roast, which is highly ambitious in Nepal.
Yeah.
But they suffer from terrible inconsistency within a single bag.
So the roast is uneven.
Very. You will pour them out and see a chaotic mix of dark and light beans. Crucially, they do not print manufacturing dates on their packaging.
Which is a massive red flag. And that brings us to Nepal Organic Coffee, which barely passed the middle mark with a 3 out of 5.
Right.
They deliver a good, strong, earthy flavor, but the beans are roasted super dark, and it is almost scientifically impossible to get a proper crema from them.
Yeah, the crema is a huge issue there.
Now, for anyone who hasn't operated an espresso machine, the crema isn't just about visual appeal or having a pretty layer of foam.
No, it's chemistry.
Exactly. It is the result of carbon dioxide, which builds up inside the bean during the roasting process, off-gassing and emulsifying with the natural coffee oils under high pressure.
So if you pull a shot and there is no crema,
It scientifically indicates that the beans have lost all their trapped CO2. In other words, they are completely stale.
exactly. The lack of a crema is a dead giveaway of age, regardless of whatever recent roasting date might be stamped on the bag.
Finally, our third group of the mid-pack involves the ghost beans.
I love that name for them.
These are excellent products that are severely hampered by supply chain issues.
Oh, yeah.
We have Him Cafe, which secured a solid 3 out of 5 for being wonderfully nutty, fresh, and lacking that typical bitterness.
No problem.
They are incredibly hard to actually find in stores.
Yeah. We also have to mention Pokhara Pizza House. This was the famous defunct liquid gold of Nepal.
Wait, coffee from a pizza house?
Yeah, the owner used to source fresh beans from the west of Pokhara and roast them on a small Korean roaster right inside his pizza shop.
That's amazing.
It was legendary craft coffee, but sadly, production has ceased entirely. And then there's Machapuchar Coffee, a highly regarded Western brand that didn't even make David's final cut, simply because, despite its stellar reputation, it is practically impossible to track down on the shelves.
So mapping out that landscape paints a pretty bleak picture of the daily reality for a coffee hunter in Nepal.
It really does.
Wait, let me just jump in and play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
If I have to dodge fake organic labels, avoid chemically bitter beans hiding in gold foil, pay $25 a kilo, and hope I don't buy stale beans incapable of producing a crema, why shouldn't I just walk into a local Kathmandu supermarket and buy imported Italian beans? Why put in all this effort for a local roast?
It is a completely fair question, and the effort required is substantial, no doubt. But the reason you do the legwork is because when a Nepali roaster actually understands the thermodynamics we discussed earlier, the result is nothing short of an agricultural miracle.
An agricultural miracle. That's high praise.
To prove that, we need to look at two unique standouts that narrowly missed David's top tier, but perfectly demonstrate the immense, untapped potential of Nepal's coffee scene. Let's start with New Estate Coffee's Peaberry.
Oh, I'm so glad we were talking about the peaberry. It scored a 4 out of 5. For those who haven't dived into coffee botany, a peaberry is a fascinating natural anomaly.
It really is.
Normally, a coffee cherry produces 2 flat-sided seeds that grow facing each other. But in about 5% of any given crop, a natural mutation occurs.
And the fruit produces just a single, small, completely round bean.
Right. And because it only accounts for 5% of the yield, it requires painstaking manual hand sorting to separate them from the rest of the harvest.
Which explains the price.
Exactly. But how does that perfectly round shape actually behave differently inside the roasting drum compared to standard flat beans?
The shape changes the physics of the roast entirely. Because peaberries are perfectly spherical, they roll incredibly smoothly and continuously inside the spinning drum.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, this allows for a vastly more uniform distribution of heat transfer. Flat beans can easily end up sitting on their flat side for a fraction of a second too long against the hot metal, causing uneven scorching.
So the uniform heat distribution of the peaberry yields a remarkably distinct flavor profile.
Yes, the New Estate Peaberry produces the absolute sweetest bean you will find in Nepal, accompanied by a beautifully healthy golden crema.
And it earned a near-perfect score. The only reason it didn't top the list is purely subjective.
Right. David Weiss simply prefers a more traditional, less sweet profile in his personal cup.
Which seamlessly transitions us to the second standout Mount Everest Supreme Coffee. This one scored a 4.5 out of 5, and it is the elusive mid-roast miracle.
Finding a true mid-roast in Nepal is like finding someone who knows how to properly cook a medium-rare steak in a town where everyone just defaults to charring the meat to a crisp to be safe.
That is a perfect analogy.
By carefully managing the heat curve and pulling the beans right after that first crack, Mount Everest Supreme manages to preserve brilliant, delicate tasting notes of blackberry and dark wood.
Which serves as definitive proof that the raw Nepali bean harbors incredible hidden fruitiness and complexity, if the roaster just has the technical restraint to hold back on the heat.
Exactly.
That perfect execution sets the stage for the main event. We are finally arriving at the absolute summit. Based on a decade of purchasing, grinding, and brewing, let's count down the top 5 Nepali coffee beans.
Let's do it. Coming in at number 5 is Himalayan Highland Coffee, earning a highly respectable 4.5 out of 5.
What makes this one stand out?
What makes this bean fascinating is the cross-cultural supply chain. The Arabica cherries are grown in the high altitudes of the Dampas region, but the roasting takes place down in Pokhara using a tiny, highly specialized Japanese roasting machine.
And that Japanese influence is clear in the output. It is a precise mid-dark roast that delivers what David describes as a rich, dark chocolate and woody cacophony.
It's excellent. The vast majority of their production is strictly earmarked for the Japanese export market. But if you're savvy, you can find it at their specific Pokhara outlet.
At number 4, we have the Chikusa Craft Blend.
Yes, the beans themselves earned a very solid 4 out of 5, but the house coffee brewed in their actual shop secured a flawless 5 out of 5 rating.
Which means it's a true independent craft operation. They source various local beans and carefully blend them in-house.
The resulting flavor profile is this incredibly unique, rustic, nutty wood flavor. But there is a massive technical takeaway here for the home brewer.
Right, the brewing method matters.
The reason their house cup scores higher than the take-home beans is entirely due to their extraction method. Chikusa uses a traditional cloth filter brewing technique.
Oh, a cloth filter.
Yeah, which allows certain essential coffee oils to pass through that a normal paper filter would just trap. If you purchase these beans, you really need to invest in a cloth filter setup at home to fully replicate that magic.
Moving to number 3, we traveled to the Dading district with Buddha Organic Coffee. It scored 4.5 out of 5.
Visually, this product is entirely unassuming, and it actually struggles to produce a thick crema.
Which we know usually means it's stale.
Right, but sensory-wise, the taste is extraordinary. It delivers an incredibly complex old wood smoke flavor, perfectly balanced with a mild underlying fruitiness.
And crucially, from a tasting perspective, it is one of the very few Nepali coffees that leaves a deeply pleasant, lingering finish on the palate.
Most local roasts have a flavor that aggressively hits the tongue and then immediately vanishes, but this one stays with you long after the sip.
Taking the number 2 spot is Royal Nepal Coffee, securing a flawless, perfect 5 out of 5 rating. This entry is a masterclass in juxtaposition.
It really is. I mean, you look at the packaging on the shelf, and it is this totally generic, minimalist foil wrapper.
It looks like a bulk item you would find abandoned on a discount rack.
Exactly.
But it's the equivalent of walking into a rundown, hole-in-the-wall diner and suddenly being served a meticulously plated, multi-course Michelin star meal.
You open that generic foil, and inside you find these incredibly premium, glossy, perfectly developed dark beans.
And the tasting notes are absolutely phenomenal. It offers layers upon layers of deep wood characteristics.
It tastes refined and expensive, exactly like something you would be served from an exclusive private reserve in a major global city.
It solidifies the golden rule of navigating the Nepali market: never judge a coffee bean by its packaging. Which brings us, finally, to the undisputed kings of the Nepali coffee world. Number 1. This title actually goes to 2 distinct products produced by the exact same estate, Jalpa Gold and Johnny Gurkha.
Both meticulously grown and roasted by the Plantek Coffee Estate located in the Nuwakot district.
Let's start with Johnny Gurkha, which earned a near-perfect 4.5 out of 5.
This is a true export-quality, sun-roasted masterpiece. It showcases beautiful, vibrant, fruity mid-roast qualities that immediately remind you of the most premium European cafe brands.
But the absolute pinnacle, the best bean in the country, is Jalpa Gold.
The 5 out of 5.
Yes, it secured a flawless rating because it is the bean that finally proves what Nepal's agriculture is truly capable of when handled correctly.
It possesses a fresh, deeply fruity, and profoundly nutty quality that flawlessly mirrors the highest-end Italian export roasts.
It is the ultimate vindication of the high-altitude Himalayan Arabica bean.
Truly. When the geographical growing conditions, the harvesting, and critically, the physical chemistry of the roasting are all executed with world-class precision, Nepal genuinely produces a world-class coffee.
So let's unpack the entire journey of this exploration. We started with the harsh reality of those tourist traps in Thamel and the nationwide struggle with basic roasting thermodynamics.
The burnt beans, the wild excuses from defensive roasters, and that chemical bitterness.
Right. But by cutting through the unregulated organic labels and understanding the science behind the sticker shock, we followed David Ways' rigorous research all the way to the absolute triumph of Jalpa Gold.
It highlights a trajectory from raw, heavily misunderstood potential to spectacular, precise execution.
Absolutely.
And if you are planning a trip, or if you simply want to see the visual proof of these beans in their packaging, you really need to head over to the Longest Way Home Travel website.
Yes, definitely.
David doesn't just review the agricultural side. He has an incredibly detailed, updated list of the actual best coffee shops you can visit in person across Nepal.
And while you are visiting his site, we cannot recommend his guidebooks highly enough. Because of his boots-on-the-ground dedication, they are genuinely the most updated guidebooks in the world today.
Without a doubt.
Whether you are looking at the Trekking in Nepal guidebook, the comprehensive paperback Nepal, the Essential Travel Guide, or the digital edition that you can download immediately to your phone, his knowledge is completely unmatched.
We will put all those links right in the show notes for you.
And if you enjoyed this session, please hit that like and subscribe button because we have an exclusive look at the rapidly evolving world of Nepali tea coming up very soon.
But before we officially wrap up, I want to leave you with a broader thought to consider.
Okay, what is it?
We have spent this entire session analyzing how the roasting process, the actual processing technology, the understanding of heat curves, and the physical execution is essentially the only thing holding back these incredible high-altitude agricultural products.
Right, because the raw materials themselves, the cherries growing in places like Nuakat and Diding, are already operating at a world-class level.
Exactly. So if a still developing coffee culture like Nepal's can already manage to produce a bean like Jalpa Gold,
A bean that legitimately rivals classic heritage Italian roasts despite a nationwide struggle with basic processing techniques.
right, what other hidden culinary gold mines are waiting in the Himalayas once their food processing technology fully catches up to their agricultural potential?
Oh, that is a great question. It really makes you wonder what other flavors we are missing out on simply because the processing hasn't been dialed in yet.
Right.
So the next time you find yourself sitting in Thamel, staring down at a bitter, burnt cup of coffee, just remember, it is not the mountain's fault. The potential for absolute perfection is growing right there on the steep hillsides, just waiting for the right roaster to understand the science and bring it to life.